Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Chaotic Entertainment. I'm your host, Dan, and I have some questions for you. Are you tired of your weak, squishy body? Have you ever wanted to recreate the drunk driving videos they made you watch in school? Do you have the insatiable urge to give someone third-degree burns and hypothermia at the same time? What if I told you this game lets you do all of that and more? The Outbound Ghost is an indie RPG developed by Conradical Games and published by Digerati. The game is a blend of exploration, turn-based combat, and mentally stunted ghosts with the social intelligence of a Magic the Gathering player. You play as Beepo, a genderless ghost who's also a silent protagonist, except for when they aren't. Beepo has amnesia and is on an epic quest to find their lost memories, meeting several friends along the way while committing countless acts of animal cruelty. Punching the shit out of penguins and red pandas are both valid and crucial components of my alternative lifestyle. I don't care what the culturally insensitive zookeepers have to say on the matter. Your story begins in the outer edges of Outbound. You wake up and realize that one of your many mid-drive car naps hasn't gone according to plan. At some point, you crashed and died, and now your immortal soul is trapped in the mortal realm. Dazed and confused, you drag yourself away from the wreckage and embark on an adventure. An adventure to find out who you are, where you came from, and why everyone's trying to figure out who the local serial killer is when this fucking mad woman exists. So, is it any good? Well, okay, look, it's complicated, alright? Watch to the end, I'll make it make sense. Let's start with the gameplay. The combat is simple. It's a blend of Pokemon and 1930s gang violence. Your character doesn't do a damn thing, and instead channels their emotions and feelings into physical manifestations called figments. Regret constantly looks sad and worried. Deception reminds you that Canadians are never to be trusted, and Taint is an allegory for that fungal infection that you should really get looked at. Each of these figments have their own stats and abilities, with the option to craft more buffs and powers for them known as aspects. The crafting system really lets you make a build that works for you, from making super tanks to kamikaze glass cannons. The aspects add a lot to the game, and they're a really solid way to let you customize your team, for the most part. It's not perfect, there are some issues, mostly the fact that some aspects are just objectively better than others. The actual combat works well enough though. Your normal attacks are pretty straightforward. Press a button, press it again when the little slider is in the middle of the bar. I iron my brain every night to make sure it doesn't get any wrinkles, and I can get that right. Aspect attacks, or skills, work a little differently, where their timers bounce between slightly challenging to coked up seizures. You don't have a timed defense like you do in similar RPGs, which I feel like might have been a missed opportunity. The development team obviously didn't just want to duplicate everything from an old game, and hey, fair enough. Instead, you have an absolute ass ton of status effects and abilities to work with. Freezing, poisoning, burning, this game has it all. If you've ever wanted to know the joy of killing a man by healing him, this game has you covered. Also, the coding in this game doesn't make combat immediately end when an enemy dies, meaning that if you're using a multi-hit ability, you'll spend your attacks defacing your enemy's gravestone. Some people might call this an oversight. Those people are fucking stupid. This isn't an error in coding, it's a perfectly good opportunity to flex on those weaker than you when they're at their lowest. I don't care if it's in bad taste, if you're so much of a bitch that you manage to die twice, then you deserve all the T-posing you're about to get. The combat in this game can be fun, but more importantly, it can be fucking hilarious. One of my favorite combinations to do in this game is to poison an enemy, then apply this thorny wind to myself, then burn their toes and laugh when every single action they take makes them lose more and more health. If you really want to floss on them, give them 3 stacks of your strongest poison and cast major health regen on yourself. The look of dismay and terror on the poor brain-dead AI's face as it slowly kills itself on your roided out body is more than worth the game's $20 price tag. With all of that said, the combat plays second fiddle to this game's adventure. And what an adventure it is, because holy hell, this game is gorgeous. The art style is heavily inspired by Paper Mario, and it shows in the best of ways. Instead of just trying to copy an older title's aesthetic, the Outbound Ghost takes it and really makes it its own. The environments are beautiful, the character models are interesting, and none of the areas look like each other. Every setting looks and feels unique, with an absolute banger of a soundtrack to accompany it. You'll be traversing every environment imaginable, from tundras to deserts to the final boss area in Bloodborne. This game's lighting effects, attention to detail, and knowing when to use drawings or 3D art is absolutely on point, and I cannot praise it enough enough for that. I mentioned the soundtracks, and one of my favorite things is there's a massive variety of music in this game to go with the exploration and the combat. The songs all blend with the environments, and none of the towns ever feel like the wrong soundtrack was chosen for it. If that wasn't enough, the artist for this game decided that we need several different characters that all look absolutely fucking adorable, or horrifying depending on the area. This game has a massive variety of ghostly apparitions you'll be fighting from beginning to end. Spooky vampires, swamp cats, my high school math teacher. This game gives you so many different enemies to fight as you progress. The rest of the monsters are pretty cool, and nearly all of them can be added to your party. You don't just have all the story-based figments in your arsenal, you can pack your team full of random monsters you find around the map. Before I go on, this is where we start getting into some spoilerish territory. I'll avoid spoiling the plot, but you might see some stuff before you're meant to. Fair warning, alright? In this game, you'll be hitting up a number of different towns and cities, all with their own quirks and traits. We have the southern outskirts, where all the characters who will make your life a living hell live. Ravensguard, whose sole exports are communism and methamphetamine, and Rundoyer, which really doesn't matter. Each of these places have their own style and purpose for the plot. The game reuses a lot of character models for NPCs, but that's not really surprising when each place has dozens of them. Some have insightful little snippets of lore, others make me lock my door at night. People call me Big Man, but my real name is Loparo Temaco Selaco Galio Cranio Lepsano Drim Hypitrimato Silfio Carabamel Ito Kataki Menokil Epicosifo Fatoperester Electri Onept Cafello Kiclopelio Lagio Siraio Bafetragonia Terrigad. I just summoned fucking Cthulhu. As you progress through each town, you'll find more and more clues about what happened to everyone in Outbound. The game tells you there was a serial killer who rampaged through the place years ago, killing anyone who survived the local water source being tainted. Otherwise, everything is conveyed through hints and context clues. Some of the clues are pretty subtle, like some of the signs and billboards. Others are literally things like pitchforks jammed into people's pillows. Maybe it's just me, but that feels a little personal. It's really cool to walk around and use these little hints to try and piece everything together. Like these posters telling everyone they have to drink blueberry juice because the water's unsafe. Or this hippie telling us his cult used to give people blueberry juice to kill them. Wait, what the fuck? When the NPCs aren't giving you dialogue, they sometimes have great little quips or jokes that add a bit of flavor to the setting. The important ones get to have full-blown discussions, along with their own backstories that you'll learn about as the game progresses. We have Frank, the grouchy mayor grandpa, Michael, a wannabe detective who you'll learn to hate 2 minutes into the game, Mary, his sister who somehow managed to surround herself with people I exclusively hate, and Linda, who has a secret history with Beepo, and I'm pretty sure wants to bang Mary, and Adrian, the only other person in the area with amnesia. These are the major characters that the plot is going to revolve around as you play. Also, there's Levi. He's not real important. The game thinks he is, but boy is he not. The dialogue between the characters in this game is on a spectrum of great to mind-bogglingly infuriating. The tender moments in this game are genuinely sweet and really heartfelt. There's one big issue though. You know how in every stupid rom-com, when there's any sort of conflict, people who have known each other for years suddenly lose the ability to communicate? Stretch that out to 13 hours. That's this game. Adrian gets a bad headache when he meets Beepo, so he runs off and leaves you in a coma. Instead of telling his longtime friends and neighbors about the situation, Adrian decides he's just going to endlessly run and yeet your ass off a cliff. After your little reenactment of the Lion King, Mary gets worried about Beepo and starts seeing figments, just like Beepo does. She tells Michael about this, and what does he do? Sprints off because he's insanely jealous that she's worried about Beepo. Then he sabotages every attempt the party makes at finding Adrian because maybe the forgetful red senpai will notice him if he screws over literally everyone around him. This setup and formula is repeated over and over, and it gets old real fast. I don't know if I'd call it lazy writing, but it makes lovable characters into the whiniest, most self-important children you'll ever meet. I've seen Reddit mods with better communication skills and smaller egos than these ghosts. Which is interesting because I don't consider either of those groups human. Teen drama aside, the game does make the overarching story worth your time. It's really engaging, and it begins raising a lot of questions that you'll come to want answers to. Who is Beepo and why were they headed to Outbound? Who are the cult and where did they all go? What achievement do we have to unlock to finally watch Mary and Linda fight? I never felt bored during any of the first 3 chapters, and I constantly found myself wanting to know more. Every time a story arc was finished, I was happy with the conclusion, but upset that it hadn't lasted just a bit longer. I can't tell if this means it went by too fast, or maybe I just enjoyed it so much that I wish it had stuck around longer. The writing in this game isn't perfect, but it's clear to me that Conrad put a lot of their heart into this thing. It's a solid foundation, it just needs a little more polish, which is going to make this next segment very unfortunate. I'm about to deep dive into some serious spoiler territory. In other words, I'm about to ruin the entire plot. If you want to try this game for yourself and you want to see the twists firsthand, pause the video right now and jump ahead to the timestamp on the screen. I'm spoiling everything and I'm not going to be gentle about it. No dinner, no wine, bite that pillow, we're going in dry. They gone yet? Great. We need to talk about this game's ending. Before I do, I have a favor to ask. If you've already played this game or you know its ending, please tell me in the comments what you thought about it. For me, here's my opinion. Imagine you're watching a beloved friend run a marathon. But they're not just running it, they're fucking winning it. They're in the lead by literal miles with just an endless amount of energy. They get to the finish line, not a single other racer in sight. And what do? They turn around and yank off their shorts and they drop one of the biggest shits you've ever seen on the finish line. They pull their shorts up without wiping and begin walking the way they came from without ever finishing the race. Then they call you up 10 minutes later and ask if you want to go jogging with them. That's this game's ending. This game's story ends in Chapter 4. There is very little build-up during this chapter, it's just a lot of backtracking. In fact, it's all backtracking. They reveal a big plot twist in a 20-second cutscene, roll credits, then you start Chapter 5. The 5th chapter is literally just a scavenger hunt with a random character, so I won't bother talking about it. I mentioned earlier in the review that there's a mystery about Linda and Beepo's history. There's the stuff about Levi being a member of a cult and taking an interest in Adrian's figments. There are a lot of big questions this game takes the time to establish and build, which is what makes the story so good. And then it answers abso-fucking-lutely none of them. It doesn't just ignore them, they actually dangle the possibility of an answer in your face, then yank it away at the start of Chapter 4. Linda and Beepo finally find Adrian. After several hours of chasing this useless man around the entire country, these 3 finally cross paths. Adrian and Beepo are about to talk, finally giving us all some serious insight into the connection between these two. They race toward each other, and then everything just cuts. This is where the plot ends. You never advance past this point. Instead, you spend the next hour or so backtracking through Adrian's experience in the campaign until you get to the major plot twist. He's the one who killed everyone. He was the murderer. He's the serial killer. And the thing is, I kinda don't give a shit. The serial killer is mentioned in the main story, but you mostly hear about him in vague background references. I spent 13 hours in this game. I got to the very end and I realized that the major historical event that set this entire plot in motion was less important to me than the fact you can pet the fucking dog in this game. I want to know about Linda and Beepo. I want to know about Shirley and everyone else's history with each other. I even want to know about Levi and his weird cult. But you know who I don't give a flying fuck about? Adrian. You know who this game made important to the plot but did almost nothing to make the player care about? Adrian. When Beepo gets their memory back and mentions how they blocked it out to avoid negative stuff in their past, it was super goddamn obvious that the killer was Adrian. It was obvious according to the plot, and it makes sense, and it still manages to absolutely disappoint. You know why? I counted how many times I interacted with Adrian. I took time out of my schedule, time I was going to spend ignoring my loving wife, and I counted how many times I got to talk to this man. And do you know how many interactions you'll have with him? 3. Do you know how many of these encounters are genuinely impactful? None of them. This game does nothing to make me care about Adrian. In fact, it almost goes out of its way to make me not give a shit about him. Adrian avoids the group because I get angy headache when Beepo is near me, uwu. But because everyone in this game has the social intelligence of your friendly neighborhood crackhead, he can't just say that. No, he drags this all the way out to chapter goddamn 4. He has no meaningful interactions with any of the characters, not even Levi. The dude who's been helping him run and hide from you? Yeah, he vaguely mentions he's in a cult and then he just kinda fucks off. Thanks, Levi. You did almost nothing and you had more time with Adrian than literally anyone else. Adrian being the killer is such a weak plot twist because I don't care about him. And why would I? Every time he's on screen, it's almost never a positive experience. He doesn't bond or build up a relationship with any of the characters. He makes everyone's lives miserable because he just can't have a normal conversation with anyone. And then I'm supposed to pretend I give a flying fuck when I find out he's a bad person? Really? Him? The dude who threw me off a goddamn cliff and has been single-handedly responsible for all of my negative experiences might not have been a good person? Next you're going to tell me that Shirley's kind of a bitch and expect me to be shocked. This game had everything going for it. Yes, some of the characters felt a bit one-note, maybe the pacing was a little awkward, and sure, the exploration feels a bit sluggish. But this game was punching way above its weight class in gameplay, graphics, and most of the story right up until the last chapter. You cannot have a game put this much emphasis on a mystery and then decide not to answer any of the questions. The serial killer always felt like such a minor part of the story, like the plot was a pair of adults trying to have a conversation, and the killer mystery was that annoying 8-year-old showing them the same shitty macaroni art he made for the 9th time that evening. It was something that belonged to the background, and for some reason this game decided that wrapping up that loose end was more important than giving us any resolution to the problems we actually cared about. It gets even worse when you discover this game is going to add a New Game Plus mode. I'm genuinely horrified that they might expect us to repeat a several-hour campaign for the sole purpose of getting the actual ending. Or they've set everything up for the sequel and they're waiting to make us pay another $20 to get any resolution or closure. And don't get me wrong, the ending doesn't ruin the entire game for me. I still look back at the gameplay and smile because I had fun, I enjoyed the combat, I enjoyed the exploration. But the ending?
It sucks, man.
Look, I don't give numbered scores in my reviews, but if I had to assign a number, this game would have easily been an 85 to an 89. Possibly higher, but with this ending, with this being the way it wraps everything up, it tanks down to a 65 or 70. Period. Everything gets a solid B to an A score, but the story drops to a fucking D-. I don't know if this is something that they can patch or fix, or if they're planning to add some post-game content to address it. Honest to God, I hope they do, and if they do, it better be free. Because if all of the answers are locked behind a $9.99 paywall, I'm gonna fucking invade New Zealand. I will make Australia 1.5 suffer for this game's sins. And at the end of the day, this game's ending puts me in a very difficult position. I desperately want to give the game a positive score, but this ending isn't just lackluster, it's genuinely harmful to the overall experience. So, here's what I'm going to do. Chapters 1 through 3 get a positive review from me. Fantastic, absolutely enjoyable, highly recommend it. Chapter 4 can suck my dick, and Chapter 5 is about as impactful and meaningful as my parents were during my informative years. If you can live with a very dissatisfying ending, that explains your relationship and you should probably pick this game up. But if you can't bring yourself to play this without having a solid resolution to wrap everything up, either wait for DLC to fix it or maybe just skip this one altogether. That's the fairest verdict I can give. It's up to you to decide if this game deserves your $20 or not. I don't regret my purchase, but only because of how much I enjoyed the rest of it. If any other aspect of this game was even slightly worse, then I'd have a very different opinion. But hey, maybe you have a different opinion than me. If you do, then like I said earlier, please comment down below. I'd love to hear your reasoning. Maybe there's something I'm overlooking. In any case, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like and to consider subscribing. If you want to help support this channel, please remember to share this video with your friends and consider checking out my Patreon. Like I said, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all next time.